Welcome to the SwimStrong Dryland Podcast. We are dedicated to inspiring and educating the swimming world. Our podcast highlights the work, character, and achievements in and around the SwimStrong community. Welcome to the SwimStrong Dryland Podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Teagan Steinmetz here, who is headed off to North Carolina State. Teagan, why don't you go ahead and give everyone just a quick intro of yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Teagan Steinmetz, and I'm from Colorado, or Denver, Colorado, a little bit outside of Denver. And I just left my club team, which is Denver Swim Academy, and I am now at NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina. So go Pack.
I love it. Well, I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more, for the audience to get to know you a little bit more, and all the things that you're doing that people may have no idea about. But before we dive in to the main content, I want to do some rapid fire get to know you questions so that SwimStrong Nation can get to know Teagan. So Teagan, what is your walkout song?
Sounds a little bit crazy, but I am a Disney girl, and I have chosen Moana multiple times for a walkout song. So that always takes everyone a little bit off guard, but it's my favorite. It keeps me grounded, so
that's
I'd say
awesome.
Moana.
Well, on that note, favorite movie or book?
Oh, that's hard. I'm not a movie watcher, but I am a sucker. I'm an Avengers girl all the way through. Marvel movies. I would have to say a basic Endgame as my favorite. I mean, my favorite Marvel scene comes from that movie, but yeah, I would have to say the Avengers.
I love that answer. What would be your dream job?
That's also a hard one, and I feel like it's an ever-changing one, especially going to college now. But right now, I want to be a neuroscientist and on the research side, like learn about the brain and, keep it at that.
Cool. And if you could meet any celebrity, who would you most like to meet?
I would really like to sit down with Caleb Dressel and his chickens. I mean, what a great guy in and out of the water, and I do like chickens too. That's
awesome. Yeah. How about if you are at a swim meet, your favorite restaurant that you would go to on a swim meet weekend?
Pasta 100% if it's dinner, like some sort of Noodles and Company, Olive Garden vibe, or Chipotle.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah. And describe to everyone the moment, if you can remember one, that you would say you fell in love with the sport of swimming.
That is a hard one because there's so many moments that come to mind just about my love for the sport. But I think it would have to be definitely a summer league moment, like my neighborhood team. Just realizing that the sport is just like more of a community than it is just like about swimming and getting faster and going XYZ times. So I would say definitely some relays with just my neighborhood friends and being able to experience those in like a low pressure and just like enjoying everyone's presence in the sport. So that would be a basic one.
I feel like that's where it starts for most people, for a lot of people. Those awesome memories.
100%.
And last quick question here. What is your favorite part about the SwimStrong Dryland program, if you could pick anything?
I definitely, that's hard. First, I just love the like wide variety of things that you guys cover, whether it's like actual dryland or like being able to learn about nutrition and like all those different resources, but also just the community and, having your accountability partners and like always being able to check in with the coaches. Like it's such a community, as you can tell. And I think that is really motivating. So that was my favorite part.
Well, thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit. For everyone out there, I want to jump in though to something I'm really excited to speak with you about. And you have actually taken a leap of faith and started your own podcast, which I think is incredible, and something that I think a lot of people would be pretty timid to do. Tell me about that process. Well, first of all, tell us what's the name of the podcast, and kind of the heart behind it, and what was the path to actually starting that?
Yeah, so my podcast is called You're Already Everything, and you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts. Spotify is the most popular probably, or just like if you just search it up, there's like, I don't even know how many platforms there are that you can technically listen to it on, but it surprises me every day when I can see like where it's been listened to on. But so there's a lot of options to listen to it on, and The reason behind starting that, I think in my, well, now 19, my birthday was a couple weeks ago, 19 years of life, I've had just like a lot of adverse experiences. And someone like told me one day, it was like, hey, like you kind of like had a lot, like you would be great if you started a podcast. Like that would be so something that I would listen to, that I think a lot of people could learn from. And that was probably a couple of years ago when someone told me this. And so I always kind of sat in the back of my mind a little bit, because I also love to talk and I'm a talker. So like it took a while for me, because it's like stressful to, put yourself out there like that. And I was like, well, what if people don't like it? Like there's all these like fears. So about in the last year, it was like last November, I think. And I was like, you know, why don't I just like take a leap of faith here, like you said, and like start this podcast? And the reasoning behind it was, I feel like I've just had, like I said, mentioned a little bit earlier, like I've had so many different experiences that I think people can learn from, and that like by me sharing, like I feel like I do take a leadership role. Like I was the captain of my high school team. I've like grown up, just finished my 14 years on my summer league team. Like I I enjoy taking kind of the leadership role, and like encouraging like the younger kids on my team, and like helping raise them a little bit, like
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And so being able to make a podcast and have a space where I can talk about different experiences I've had, things I've been through, and like give all the best advice that I can for people that maybe are going through similar hardships or hard
Yeah.
times, like need that kind of like maybe light in the distance. That was kind of the goal behind it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And do you have any personal examples of like any specific content that you've already put out there that have been impactful for you or for others that you'd like to share about?
Yeah. It's just, so I've had like, and one thing I didn't mention, another reason I like started this podcast was, I just think there's like so many, similar to you, there's so many great people in the world that just have so much different experience to share, and getting to bring people onto my podcast too has been like, whether it's like some episodes so far have just been me talking about my experiences, but some other ones, like I had Olympian volleyball player Rachel Adams on, and she talked about the importance of mindset and like handling at the highest level, and like all of those things, and just being able to bring on different people with different experiences is like another huge reason why I started it.
Awesome.
But shoot, what did you just ask before
Yeah,
I
no,
went down to that?
no, that's great. I love it. Just being able to have a platform to really
Yeah,
make much of a lot of people, a lot of awesome people around the country and around the
yeah,
world. And that's really a big thing with this SwimStrong Dryland podcast as well. So I love the heart. I love the mindset of what you put together and really stepped
yeah.
out and done that. So the question I had, is there any piece of content that stands out to
Oh
you of the
yeah.
podcast that you've done so far that was maybe a highlight or something you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, just to go along with the swimming one, I have a podcast just talking about my entire swimming experience, which has been, as many athletes, very up and down over the years. But one of the hardest things is that like before COVID, I like took fourth at junior nationals in the 400 IM. Like that was like put me on the map kind of moment. And then COVID hit, and I had a really, really hard time coming out of COVID, just getting back to where I was. So I struggled like my sophomore and junior year, even though I felt like I had been like working my very hardest, and like things were still just not going my way. And it took until just this past senior year where I finally like got back to where I was before I ended up breaking my toe and fracturing part of my foot. But regardless of that part of the story, I shared just like my entire swimming experience, and like even though I had like so many disappointments, is just like still getting up. And if you love it, you'll still get up the next day and like come back and like keep trying, because, like I'm living proof that you can get back to where like you were, even like it sometimes will unfortunately take the years. And like that's just part of the sport, which is just crazy to me, like how hard swimming is just mentally in that aspect.
Hmm.
So like things like that, which a lot of people have reached out to me and said like, that was really important for me to hear. I'm going through a hard time like with that, but like hearing that you've gotten through it, and that you just continue to wake up too and put that work in even when it feels like it's worthless, like all those moments, that's really important to come back and hear on my end, just that it's helping, and seeing the same thing, but also can like find the light in me in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And tell me more about that mindset. So you've talked about a lot of different adversity. That obviously that was a big picture, so nobody can
Yeah,
really dive into the details there of 4 years of different ups and downs and
yeah,
struggles just in high school. And then obviously
yeah.
there's an even bigger scope. But what helped you get through that time? What was how did you develop the mindset that you have now? The positive, like, you can feel the energy and the positivity and the excitement just coming off of you right now. And I'm wondering, I'm sure that didn't just happen overnight. What was that process like when things were super challenging for you?
Yeah. I would say like my junior year was probably the hardest year. I felt like I had been putting everything into every single practice, and still at the like end of season where I went to sectionals, like just really nothing went well. And it was like I had this moment I can even remember. It was like after the finals of the 400 IM, and I was just like laying on this like little chair upstairs, and I was just like, wow, this sucks. And I think part of the thing I recognized was it does, like, sometimes you have to take a moment. It's hard to be like rainbow butterfly sunshine all the time and like, oh, it's fine, like, it's I'll move on, it's all good. um Part of that was the week after of just like sitting there and like, wow, that really sucked, and I felt like I put everything I could into it, and like taking a moment to feel those like maybe awful emotions, but instead of letting them spiral into like, I want to quit, this isn't worth it, all of those things, kind of turning it into a light of, I put so much work in, but like I'm not just gonna let this be the end. I'm not gonna just let it end here. Like, just because I just worked my butt off for the year and it didn't end well in one meet does not mean that I'm an awful swimmer or will never get back to where I have been, or that I don't love the sport. Like, it took me a few weeks after to just like take some time off and then come back a little bit, splash around, and just like remember why I love swimming. And it always, for me, comes back to why I love the sport. And one huge thing that got me through that is just my teammates, and curating like a culture on my team that was just positive, and that we all work hard together through our ups and downs. And one thing I talk about also is like I have a positivity episode, and one thing that I've like created, at least on my club team and my high school team, is this thing called the positivity pool. And the rules of the positivity pool are that you can't complain, like you can't say anything negative, there's no gossiping. Like, sometimes you come to practice and you just want to like vent all the negative things out, but that can be a very negative place too. And when you're trying to become better at your sport and better at your craft and like be positive, some of those things will drag you down, so it's like, leave all those things at the door. And then another thing is like, I always high five or knuckle someone, like everyone in my lane, like after every set. So that's a rule too. And so it became like routine. Everyone always high fives or knuckles people after the sets, like those kind of things to like keep each other going and keep each other positive. Creating that kind of space within my team and in my high school team, like, at least for me, I mean, I don't, anyone else can attest to whether it helped them or not, but for me, I know, really trying to, and like, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, you're not always like loving the set, you're not always, like I said, like, you're not walking into a 400 IM day like so excited and like,
let's go.
Yeah, exactly. But like, sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it a little bit. So that kind of aspect of the positivity pool is like another thing that I think
like
is really
that
important.
idea. I've not heard that before, positivity pool. When you were doing that, when you started doing that, what difference did you notice that made for you personally?
Yeah, I think, and I mean, I just know because I used to be a very negative person, I think, because I get a lot of practice anxiety and like race anxiety. And so I think I mean, even to this day, it's like I have to be very intentional because it's easy for me to spiral down, like, oh, I'm not doing good enough, or like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I'm not going fast enough. Like, this practice is like, I'm not doing well. So I found myself and other people having to be a lot more intentional, like take a moment and be like, is what I'm about to say positive? How is it gonna like affect everyone around me? Is it gonna bring the team up or down? Like, is me complaining gonna rub off on everyone else and kind of like ruin the vibe of like what could be a great set, and like what could be, we could really ride the energy in a better way. So I think that was the biggest thing, is you found yourself like rethinking your thoughts a little bit, like, how is this like helping me? How are these thoughts helping me? And is there a way I can not say it and say something else instead that's going to have a bigger, more positive impact on the team?
That's good. I think that is a skill that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to develop or realize that it's a skill that you can train your mindset just like you can train your body. You can, catch the thoughts that are coming into your head, reframe them, and decide what you want to focus on. And that it's encouraging to hear how you have transformed that, because training your mind, in my opinion, is harder by a lot than
Yes.
it is to train your
Yes.
body. So do you have any tips or things that you have done that you have been able to, hey, here's the thoughts that I see coming into my mind, instead of just believing that all these things are true and letting it dictate my emotions, I'm going to actually choose a different thought process. Like
Yeah.
what did that look like for you? Because that's not easy.
Yeah. And it's still like something I struggle with on the day to day. Like it's training your mind and like trying to get into a better mindset is not just like a overnight or okay, like it was good for a week, so like now it's like good for life. Like it's a constant thing, at least for me, to deal with. And one thing, I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And it has been really life changing because it talks about, like you see a set on the board and it's like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to live through this? Like for me at least, it's like your body goes into fight or flight mode sometimes. And like that's where my thoughts like start to spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about taking, like, it's all about perception. You're not going to die. Like you're not going to die in a set. You can swim. You're not going to suddenly die in a race. You're not going to suddenly die in the set. Like it's all about like returning to the present moment for me. And I would say that the biggest things that have helped me try and transition into this mindset is like just breathing before and like trying to just, if anything else, breathe before the set, like come back to my breath whenever I can and just like be in the present moment. I'm not thinking about the later part of the set that's like daunting on me. I'm not thinking about the past. Like I'm focusing on like stroke by stroke, one thing at a time. And that present moment is really like what helps me. And then also just really, I'm a social person, if you couldn't tell. But like being around my team, like swimming, I would not be where I am in the sport if I had to swim alone every day. Like that's why you have a team. That's why you've got teammates around and coaches.
Yeah.
So just being able to look to the person next to me and be like, we got this, like we're in this together. Like let's do this together. That is also a huge thing. Is just knowing that everyone around me, even though like I feel like I'm not doing great, I feel like I'm dead, I feel like I can't go any longer, like so is everyone else, but we're all in it together. And for me personally, that's a huge, like, gets me over that hump.
Yeah, that's so important. I love the idea of, not the idea, the truth that teamwork and
Yeah.
camaraderie really makes a difference in your
Yeah.
day-to-day performance and your mindset. There's lots of research behind that actually
Yeah.
shows when your team comes together, you will do significantly more in the
Yes.
water or whatever your sport is, you will improve. And so I think it's pretty inspiring to hear how you stepped out in like the positivity pool that you mentioned, and you
Yeah.
are always encouraging your teammates. And how I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are like, man, I wish that my team had that environment. Like I'm in a team environment where that doesn't happen and
Yeah.
everybody's pretty quiet and there's not that much encouragement. And you have to have someone who's willing to step out of their
Yeah.
comfort zone and be that person that people might be like, that's weird. They're like
Yeah.
overly positive. And
Yep. Yep.
so how did you get the confidence or the courage to go from the spot to like just being a swimmer on the team to being a leader who's like, you know what, I know that not only will I benefit from this, our whole team will benefit from this. So I'm just going to step out and do it. What led you to that point?
I think just at least on my high school team, and like, club and high school are very different. And just in general, every single club team is different. You've got different people practicing. Maybe your group, you're only swimming with the best of the best, but some other club teams, like you're swimming with kind of everyone. You've got a lot of different levels. And at least on my high school team, my about freshman and sophomore year, I felt like there was just I love my high school team. I loved everyone I've swam with, but there definitely was a very negative outlook and like I kind of like dragging your feet. I don't really want to be here, that kind of thing. And for me, like I love swimming. Like, why are you swimming if you don't love it? Why are you like
Right.
in the most positive way possible, right? Like, in my opinion, if you don't really love it, then like it's so much work to put your time
You
and
shouldn't do
energy.
it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing bad about that. It's just maybe it's not for you, and that's completely respectable and fine. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how can I, when I'm like get to be an upperclassman or have a little bit more voice, like have a better effect on the team that's gonna make people a little bit more positive, like a little bit more smile. Like we're here for multiple hours a day together. Like let's make the most of it. Let's make it the happiest we can instead of like I feel like not like rather be doing anything else than be here.
Mm-hmm.
So um I guess it was definitely hard to like come to the idea of be like, hey, this is the positive pool. And let me tell you, some people on my high school team were not thrilled about it. Like I had this poster, like I made the positive pool poster and it had all the rules and it was hung right in front of where we swam. And so it's like
I love it.
every time something negative came up, oh, that's not the positive pool. Like those are the rules. Like, that doesn't apply under there. So you have to be willing, I think. I definitely also talk to my coaches with it. Like you've got like that kind of communication. But if you're someone that is trying to change that kind of culture and you notice that that can be improved, I would talk to your coaches and be like, hey, like I feel like our culture can be improved, and I as an aspiring leader want to be a part of that, and here's some ideas that I have, and kind of go from there, because I think any coach at least should want to improve their culture and make it a more positive place.
Yeah.
So that can be scary though, I know, but I think any coach, if you can get a coach to back you up on that, that will make it way better than just like you coming saying like, hey, here's my positive pool poster, like this is all the rules and this was 100% just me and all that, versus
Mhm.
like your coach coming with you and like, this is how we're gonna here's how we're gonna approach like talk on the pool deck, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, having a team around you, not just yourself, but like bringing people
Yeah.
into the idea so
Yes.
you can do it
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's cool. And it does take some boldness and some courage, but I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes people are just afraid to take that step. And, sometimes too, people, it is a struggle. Like you're worried what people might think. Like, what are they
Yeah.
going to think if I'm just like this positive person
Overly
all the time?
positive,
Yeah.
like, come on. Yeah, trust me, I've gotten that a lot.
Like, what is wrong with you? And then
Yeah,
they think that your life is sunshine and rainbows, but that's not the
not
truth.
the case.
And so I think it's important for people, and maybe you can speak to this, to know the difference between being like fake positive versus like choosing what you are going to think about because you know it will or will not be beneficial for you, right? Like there's
Yeah,
a difference between that.
yeah,
And I think you alluded to that before because you were mentioning that when you were talking about the positive pool, but how do you navigate that, or what are your thoughts around that?
yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I've seen some of, and no offense, some of like the most negative people I know take it and kind of run with it a little bit. And like I said earlier, sometimes you do have to fake it till you make it. If you've never said a positive thing during practice, if you always saying, this sucks, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this, I'm going to die, like this is too hard, like all the things. If you've never said a positive word, like it's going to be a change and you might not mean it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is a difference between meaning something and not, but at the same time, sometimes the place to start I've found is just like, you just got to say, oh, I love this, I got this. Like there's almost like a trick into your brain. Like you're not suddenly going to love doing multiple 400 IMs, but just saying, I got this, we got this, we're going to get through it. Like I can do this. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
die doing this. Even just starting by making those baseline comments, I think is a start. And then you have to like, it kind of gets your mind off of all the negative things that you've once known. So just
Yeah.
even faking it till you make it is something that I think is oddly backhandedly important, you know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because you're even in doing that, you're thinking about something that's not negative, at least, even
Yeah.
if it's
Even if
sarcastic.
you're like
You're
laughing at, you're like, oh, I love this. Like then we're laughing because it's like no one really loves this, but like
mm-hmm.
it's kind of a bonding moment for everyone to have to
Yeah.
like, fake it till you make it a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like those times are the ones that you probably end up remembering. You're like, remember
Yep.
that set that we
Yep.
did? And remember how but the way that you think dictates the way you will approach
Yes.
your work. So if
Yeah.
you decide to change the way you think, then the way that you work will change. And if you really want your performance to change, it has to start with your mindset. And
Yep.
so I think something else that is really cool to me is hearing your story from freshman year to senior year, struggling after COVID, which I
Yeah.
think
A
most
lot of,
people can relate to.
yeah.
In some way, shape, or form, everybody struggled with something. And for a lot of people, it's pretty deep. And so you hear a lot of stories of people who actually like left the sport coming
Yeah.
back from that. And even if it wasn't COVID, people, when they get stuck or they hit a
Yeah.
plateau and they're like, I just want to be where I was. And then you can really start to get in your head and put so much pressure on yourself and you stop loving the sport, which is the whole reason why you got into it in the
Started
first
it.
place.
Yes. Yes.
And so talk a little bit about your senior year. Was an uptick that a lot of people who go through what you went through don't get to
Yeah.
experience because there is a certain level of mental endurance and fighting
Yes.
you have
Yes.
to do to get there. And I mean, you see this even at the professional level, people who haven't
Yep.
gone best times sometimes
In
in
years.
5 to 10
Yep.
years.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of them are like, well, it's not worth it anymore. Or I guess I'm just not, you know, they start equating their value with how fast they are in the sport, and they don't, instead of loving it and just, hey, let's fight through this. So easier said than done. So tell us
Yeah.
how Teagan got through multiple years of struggle and now are on the other side, having learned so much and now sharing with people.
Yeah.
That's a spot I would love to see tons of
Yeah.
people get to, because
Yeah.
everybody's going to have hard times. So what was that for you?
Um, oh gosh. I mean, and freshman me too, let's just put this into perspective. I dropped like fourth fastest time in the nation in a aqua blade. Like I was the only person at juniors that was not suited. Like I was like a living meme. Like people are like, who is this girl? She's 15 and she's not even wearing a knee skin. Like that was crazy. And that was
It's
to put into
awesome.
perspective as well. Like I had just made juniors like maybe the month or two before. Like I had no idea. I'm just like, oh, this is a regular meet. Like I have no idea what juniors means. And it's one of the fastest meets in the nation. Like especially for that age, like I had no idea. And then going into COVID, like I at least like you see a lot of people come out of COVID. Like there's two spectrums here. There's people that come out of COVID that just like skyrocketing because maybe they got that training time like for whatever reason. And then there's like the complete opposite side, which is just like really having a hard time coming out of that. We had not really. I mean, I can remember I was working out like for a time, like 8 hours a day just to feel like I was doing something. I mean, COVID was like different for everybody, but getting back into the pool eventually, I was kind of in a good place. I think like my sophomore year going into it, I went to like a US Open and I actually like think I went at best time in the 400 IM there. But kind of following that was just became a sophomore and junior year of just like feeling like I had put everything into it and like I had said, like just nothing really came out of it. And that really does get hard mentally because it's hard to wake up at in my case 4 a.m. for a 5 a.m.
Mm.
practice, a double school, dryland in there, like every single day and then not see that pay off. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're gonna have to remind me where I was going with this.
No, so just going through that process and
How I
then
got
getting
back my
to the
senior
point
year.
where your senior year, because I think that's the part that most people who go through what you went through, they never get to, because it is just too hard
The
to
end,
go
yeah.
through, is what they think. And so so you
Yeah.
can continue
Okay.
from
Got it
there.
now.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So after like I had said earlier that like my junior year going to sectionals and like taking that kind of time off after for a week or two and just like sitting with myself and like sitting with kind of those awful emotions of like, do I really want to keep going? Is this really worth it for me? And the other thing that's not even talked about is just the pressure of college too, because by that point I was committed and it's like I have just put in so much work and like what are these college coaches that just recruited me going to think if I can't even like get back to where I was, and like that kind of pressure. But I think I sat down with myself and I mean this is kind of I was going to okay, you can scratch this, but unrelated. I was like also in a relationship at the time that was probably not the healthiest for me. Well, not probably not. It was not the healthiest for me. And um I had like just about ended my relationship then. And I think what was big for me is you have to sit with yourself a little bit and like really go through your list and be like, okay, am I really like I feel like I'm doing everything that I can, but am I really doing everything that I can? Like what are these outside factors that maybe I'm
Mm.
giving my best in the pool, but am I nutritionally giving the best? Am I getting the sleep that I need? Am I sacrificing those maybe other things that like might be fun, high school experience, like those kind of things?
Mm.
But like I might be working the hardest in the pool, but am I also sacrificing in those other areas so that I can be my best? And at that point for me, like I found a list of things that like, no, my nutrition can be better. I can be like going out with friends less. I can be sleeping more. Like there's other things that I can improve upon
Mm-hmm.
that I think will influence my swimming. And sometimes it takes that like kind of realization of like if I really want to be the best, get back to where I was, like that those moments, it requires a lot more sacrifice on the outside. And so I think that's the real moment where you have to decide, okay, am I willing to take this list and sacrifice that time, that effort, those late nights, etc., or am I like going to be done? And I think that's where it got for me going into my senior year. And then I got to I'd say summer going into senior year was where I really started getting back on track. I started like learning how to fuel myself the right way. I started sleeping and like prioritizing my own health. Mixture of like, I'm not saying you can't hang out with your friends, but like, there's like things there. But going into my senior year, I mean, partially it was the challenge that you had, I think. Was that, I don't know when that started.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and I didn't eat dessert, I didn't have, I very much limited my sugar intake, and I've never got so much sleep in my life, and I was like putting in that, I took that list and I went down it and was like, how can I improve upon this, because this is gonna help me in my sport, at least so I hope. Like that's like the last resort. Is like, I've done everything in the pool. I've got this list on the side. Am I going to be willing to go all in and improve on those things? And so senior year, I was like, all in, baby. So that's kind of what I did. And that like resulted to finally me dropping in my 400 IM. And then ironically, I got DQ'd in finals at juniors. That's a whole other thing. But that prelim swim, like to see that like 416 on the board for the first time in 3+ years, I was like, I knew I had it in me, but like it, like everything kind of like fell into place at that time. And like, wow, like all those nights I sacrificed, all those, that list of decisions that like I could have decided to just throw away and be done, or decide to go all in, like it came finally full circle there. And so that is what I would say. That was a lot of talking.
That's
there,
awesome.
But
no, that's awesome. Thanks for taking us through that, walking us through the journey, because I think it's important for people to hear those details and all the different places that your mind went and the things you had to consider and think about, and really sit down with yourself and say, what do I really want and what am I willing to sacrifice? Because there is lots of sacrifice if you want to be great. Like you don't just you don't just get to junior nationals by mistake or by luck. You don't just go to North Carolina State by luck. That's something that you have to make a conscious decision for years to lead to that point. And so that's pretty awesome to hear that. And a lot of people don't understand that, like, it's not just what you do in the pool. And even not just with what you do with dryland and in the pool, there's so many things that you just mentioned there. So I think that's incredible. And I want to ask you a little bit too about, you mentioned the stress of the recruiting process, and obviously you got your Wolfpack shirt on and representing NC State. What did that process look like for you? How did you handle it? And if you could go back to your freshman year now, is there anything you would do different in the recruiting process, or something you would tell your younger self that, because I'm sure there's freshmen, sophomores on here listening to this podcast that are in your shoes, and, what would you say to your younger self? So take us through your process and anything that you would change or advice you would give.
So the first thing that I would like to say is that you're going to find, if you take the time and the work to put into recruiting, you will find a school that is for you. And there are so many, there's just in general, so many programs with just so many coaches across the board, across the nation. There will be a program that wants you. There will be a place that you can call home. And it gets so overwhelming because I think everyone, you want to be at that top school. It can be a kind of a disappointing day, I think, on June 15th or beyond, when you don't maybe get to talk to those schools that you've always dreamed of going to. But just I think my number one thing is just keep in the back of your mind that just because it's not your first choice or where you thought you were going to end up does not mean it's the wrong choice, or that you won't have a good time, or that you can't improve. All of those things. For me, I talked about, I swear, so many, it's all a blur, looking back on it, wow, that was a lot, but it was also really enjoyable, because one of the things that, why I started my podcast is everyone has so much different experience and knowledge to bring to the table. So getting to talk to a bunch of different coaches and other athletes and taking visits to schools was just so amazing for me to experience, just to see the different knowledge and training that people do and like everyone's different perspectives, I think it alone is just amazing to experience as part of the recruiting process. As for if I were to like tell my freshman or sophomore self going through it again, I would say, I mean, now there's a rule that you can take unlimited visits, which
Right.
in my opinion, I don't think if you've talked to a lot of the schools enough, like you probably will never need more than 5 because you should probably have it narrowed down by then. But I would say I took 3 of my 5 visits, and honestly, I would say to take the 2 more that I had just for the experience and just to see different places. But I think the biggest thing is I'm like, I don't know how you would ever make decisions without an official visit, just because it's so important. My biggest piece of advice for those going on official visits here in a couple months or whenever you are going, is to go on the visits and take everything in, because who people are on the phone is like, you can only read so much through a coach on a phone call. And like part of deciding where you want to go to school is like being there in person, seeing the campus. Can you picture yourself here? Like, what is the team dynamic like? What are the teammates saying? Like, what's the culture kind of like? And so that would be my biggest advice, is like really be present in those official visits, be present with the people around, like meet the fellow recruit people that you're with. Like those could be your future teammates. Like, do you vibe with them? Do you not vibe with them? Like all of those kind of things is really, those official visits are huge in my opinion. So.
And how did you end up landing on North Carolina State? What was it that stood out about Wolfpack?
Yeah, definitely the culture. I think I could see myself here. Most importantly, because I'm like swimming among the best, like I am definitely in the lower tier, but that's part of why I wanted to go, because I think in my own swimming experience throughout my 18 years, it's like I've never been the best, I've always like in that kind of that middle pack of like I'm there, but I'm not winning everything. I'm not the one breaking the records, etc. And so it kind of felt in a way like home, like that. Like I've got room to grow, and whereas some of the other programs I was talking to, I would have already kind of walked in and like been one of the best. And just for me as a person, I think I do better surrounded with people that are going to bring me up, and like or at least I guess I shouldn't say wanted, it hasn't happened yet. I want to like grow with the program and like grow into a leadership position. And I don't want it necessarily like given to me on my day walking in,
That's
so
awesome.
that's where I like saw myself most here, and just the culture of the team. Like the coaches care so much, and you can really tell, and everyone really gets along with each other, and like there's just like a connection here that I felt the most of versus like the other schools. But yeah, those were the top reasons.
Team culture, yeah, you definitely can't get a feel for that in a phone call. I think you're 100% correct. So that is huge, because the culture that you're in will be, I mean, I know that you can transfer and things like that a little easier now, but I think that would be pretty stressful compared to just finding one that you're really excited about. So, and I love the mindset of just, hey, I want to work my way up the ladder. It doesn't matter what position I'm in coming in. Like I want to be around people who are going to help me become the best version of myself. Yep. And then if people can have that mindset that you have of, okay, I want to also become a leader, so that then in a couple of years when there's underclassmen coming in, I can be that for them. So comes full circle. And I think that's really cool. So I love that you are sharing all of your swimming and life experiences with the swimming community, with the swimming world. I think that's really impactful. And one of the last questions I wanted to ask you before I let you go is, what impact have you seen or heard from people who have been listening to your podcast? Any like specific things that you can see that have been inspiring to you?
Yeah. Well, this really goes a wide spectrum, because when I first started my podcast, I was like, oh, I'm going to keep it pretty general about life. And it's definitely become more, I don't want to just say swimming focused, but mindset and like sport focused. But one thing that I think is really funny is that like my grandma will text me all the time and just be like, wow, that was really great to hear about, Rachel's volleyball mindset and like all of that. Like she's like far removed from like, playing sports and like having that mindset, but like it's still just so interesting to learn just everyone's lives and their experiences and what they bring. And I think I've gotten a wide spectrum of like words back, whether it's people saying like, yeah, I've been in a really tough place with the sport for a while, and like hearing how you got through it was really beneficial for me. Or just like, even I had I did a podcast about, it was called Decluttering December, and it was just like about how you should take the whole month of December to kind of prepare for the new year. And like, it's not just like one day you just wake up and like have New Year's resolutions. It's kind of like the whole month of decluttering your room, like all those kind of things. And like hearing that so many texts from people saying, oh, like I'm cleaning out my closet this weekend because of you, like that kind of thing. So I think just like that kind of wide spectrum, which it like seems kind of random, but it's like my podcast, so I'm gonna do whatever I want with it. And it's like, if you don't want to listen to one about decluttering December, that's totally fine. But if the one about mindset interests you, that's also totally fine. I'm not gonna judge you. I'm doing this for me and for other people, but like I've got a wide spectrum, and just like hearing that I can get feedback on like a lot of different like episode topics is like kind of fun. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing just your passion for what you're doing. The last thing that you just mentioned, that, hey, if you don't want to listen to this or that, that's fine. But like, this is for the people who do, and this is for myself and something that I enjoy. And I think if people could take that mindset into anything in life, and if we specifically apply it to the swimming world, and you just have that mindset of like, no fear. Hey, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my team. Like, I'm going to have fun with this and hopefully make an impact, and we'll see what happens. And usually if you have that mindset and you take those risks, you're going to see great things happen. And so anyway,
you worded that perfectly. That was so
thank you.
Wonderful. Those like last 20 seconds is so real. Just like sacrificing it all, doing it for you, your teammates. That's a huge thing. And it'll take you far, just those things alone. So
well, you're the one doing it. So I'm glad I was able to put it into words, but you're the one doing it, and it has inspired me and obviously many people around the country, and now hopefully more that get to hear it from this podcast, and they'll tune in to Teagan's podcast. You're already everything on multiple platforms. So what's the best way that they could that anyone could follow you who's interested, Teagan, in following your podcast?
Yeah. I'd say Spotify is the most popular one, and if you search it on Spotify, it's there, and it has like a little fortune cookie, and it says you're already everything if you're looking for the little logo. Or if you search on, if you've got like an iPhone, Apple Podcast has that, and even I'm pretty sure if you just search it up online, like Teagan Steinmetz, you're already everything, like it'll come up. But It's also, if you want to, like my Instagram also has it in its bio, the Spotify link, so that's an easy way to get there too.
Awesome. Yeah. Definitely check that out. Very much worth your time. Teagan, thank you so much for hopping on here and sharing your story. It's incredible stuff that you're doing. Keep being you and keep up the amazing work.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the SwimStrong Dryland Podcast. If you'd like to be a part of the SwimStrong Dryland family, you can reach out to us via email or social media. You can also follow SwimStrong Dryland on YouTube and TikTok for more educational content.